Okay. Well, welcome everybody to this Around the World session for our Genesis 2020 conference. And this one in particular will focus on biomanufacturing in plants. The world has been different this year for all of us, and for us putting a conference together, it's certainly been different going online. But making that shift brings opportunities, and bringing perspectives from different locations and different organizations and people is one of the benefits of being digital. So I'm delighted that we have Nathalie Charland from Medicago in Quebec and Simon Saxby from Leaf Expression Systems here in the UK, in Norwich. Today, and we'll have a discussion through maybe what's going on in the field, what your companies are up to, and what everyone can do to help make you successful going forward. What would you like from someone else? So perhaps for me to kick off, I'll just ask Nathalie maybe to introduce yourself and Medicalgo, and just sort of take us through what you'd like people to know about Medicalgo as they watch this video.
Thank you very much, Tony. It's a pleasure for me to be here and to have this opportunity to talk to you about Medicago. So I'm Nathalie Charland. I'm Senior Director of Scientific and Medical Affairs at Medicago. I'm a microbiologist by training, and I've been with the company for 16 years now, because the company is 20 years old. We just celebrated our 20 years old last year, so we're more than 20 years old now. So we are a Canadian-based company, but we also have a facility in the US, in the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, but our headquarters are based in Quebec City, Canada. So like you said, we are a plant-based company. We've been working on this technology for more than 20 years. We have a team of more than 450 scientific experts and employees, with manufacturing footprints in Canada, in the United States. And most importantly, I think what needs to be known is that we are eagerly waiting for the licensure of our first product, which would be the first human plant-derived vaccine. So we are really excited about this.
Excellent. And Simon.
Afternoon, Tony. Afternoon, Nathalie. Yes, a pleasure to be joining you on this talk. So I'm Simon Saxby. I'm the Chief Executive of Leaf Expression Systems and Leaf Systems International, essentially the same company. Leaf is a spin-out from the John Innes Centre in Norwich, and it's funded by John Innes Centre, the BBSRC, which is one of the government grant-funded bodies in the UK, and an organisation called Plant Biosciences Limited, who are essentially the commercial arm of the John Innes Centre. The John Innes Centre, of course, is a charity, but it is also one of the world's foremost plant biology facilities, with around 3,000 scientists. So the technology that we use, which actually Medicago is very familiar with too, again allows us to get very high expression of proteins and difficult to produce molecular products in plants, and it also lends itself very well to vaccine manufacture, as Nathalie has alluded to. And actually, I am waiting probably just as eagerly as Nathalie and everybody at Medicago is for the approval of their first vaccine. So their first vaccine product. So as soon as you know, Nathalie, please let me know.
We will. We're gonna be so happy. We will let the whole world know.
Yeah, and actually we'll come to this as part of the conversation we're having today. So, and as you say, Tony, we're based in the Norwich Research Park. We have a facility that was purpose-built for us, and we are a contract manufacturer. Essentially, we do make some of our own products, and we do have some internal R&D programs, including improved expression technologies, but most of our bread and butter is contract manufacturing for actually everybody from virtual biotech to big pharma.
Excellent. So it's great to hear actually two companies in that space and seeing how the progress in the field generally is coming forward. But it seems to be a rapid rise of plant-derived protein or plant-driven protein manufacturing. how do you think it's disrupting that traditional protein production and CMO world? Is that sort of, is it cleaner? Is it more cost effective? How do you think it's really impacting your competitors that you're looking to displace?
It's not really a rapid rise. I think it's fair to say that you know, this has been, but it's an interesting point, Tony. I think there are a lot of people who don't realize that actually companies and individuals and people have been producing proteins and antibodies and all sorts of interesting biomolecules in plants for a very long time. What has been lacking has been investment, essentially, in the technology. So I think that's been the biggest hindrance for it. But in terms of the disruptive nature of it, it's disruptive because it's different, and because not, as I say, not as much funding has been put into the development of the technology and the exposure of the technology to the regulatory authorities and the industry generally. So obviously lots of money has been put into improving what I call conventional bioreactor-based technologies, whether it be mammalian cells or insect cells or whatever, you know, E. coli, et cetera, But the technology in plants works extremely well, and in many cases we have actually demonstrated that we can express complex biomolecules and proteins that do not express well, particularly well in any of the other systems. So the technology has been around a long time. What has been lacking, frankly, is the approval of Nathalie's product. I mean, that's the crux of it. You know, there is an approved plant-based product on the market, but it's produced in a plant cell line as opposed to you know, whole leaf plants of the kind that both Medicago and Leaf are using. So there have been lots of products that have been put into clinical studies, you know, aside from Medicago. And Medicago, I know, has conducted huge clinical studies with their product, but none yet has been approved. And then when that happens, I think it's going to change the landscape significantly, because the upstream side of it is very, very simple. It's very scalable. It's very, very predictable, more so than bioreactor technologies. And clearly, if I say something here that Nathalie disagrees, I'm sure she will tell me. But it's all of those things. It's also, I think, more cost effective on the upstream side of things than the downstream side of things, rather than bioreactor technologies. And it's also very rapid. So there are lots of advantages to the technology. It's not the answer for everything, but no expression technology is the answer for everything. But it does have significant advantages for in lots of cases and for lots of products. So the disruptive nature of it is only because people are not fully aware of what it's capable of, and because there has been no product that has been approved so far out of a plant leaf-based, you know, whole plant-based system of the kind that we're using. So which is why I think we're all championing Medicago's efforts here, because I think it'll make a huge difference to the industry, and I think it then brings benefits to everybody.
Yep.
Nathalie, is your chance to disagree with something.
I can't. I really agree with all what Simon just said, and I think it's a good thing that we need to find positive things for the pandemic these days. So I think that the pandemic has brought forward new technologies, you know, not only plant-based technologies, but other type of platforms. And I think that has put the spotlight on our technology, and that's a good thing. And I think that's why people are getting more interested, I think, in our technology. And yes, we are different. Yes, we have this capacity of producing complex proteins and structures, like at Medicago's, where we're producing virus-like particles for our vaccine. So this is very complex. It's some are multi-layered, and they have a proven track record. So that with other type of vaccine like HPV or hepatitis B. So it's kind of a mix of new manufacturing technologies, but with proven products in the end, being virus-like particles or even antibodies. And that's the beauty, I think, of our platform, and also the versatility of the platform. So that we're kind of moving away from the one product, one platform paradigm, so that we have a platform that can produce any types of complex proteins like vaccine, antibodies, enzymes, chimeric proteins that could be used in different, disease or other industries. We don't know. I think at some point, sky is the limit. But even though the
Sorry.
no worries.
Always happens when you don't want it to.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course. That's the fun of live webinars at home. So, so Simon, you were mentioning the approved product from Protalix in a cell-based, plant cell-based culture, but even though it's not the whole plant, it paved the way with the regulators around the world so that we have a first approved plant-derived products. And like I said, with the interest of the regulators for different type of platforms of new technologies, I think that's the good timing for our industry to put a step in the real pharma world, I would say. And yeah, we're hoping that will be the first human vaccines derived from plants, but others have paved the way, and we are building on this every day.
And there are, and just following on from what Nathalie has said, Tony, the VLP technology, the other benefit of all of that is it's much safer. The safety profile that goes with VLPs is not something that should be ignored. And of course, the other aspect of it is there are no animal-derived products involved in the manufacturing process, which again, from a regulatory point of view, while some of it's different, but from a regulatory point of view, that also makes a difference, and hopefully will make life a bit easier for products being manufactured going forward. So, and then just a thought around processes. So lots of companies are using, lots of people are using bioreactor-based technologies and will continue to do so. And obviously everything's moving towards, as much as they can, single-use technologies and single-use bioreactors and everything else. But that's all plastic. So when you think about the amount of plastic that is generated in a manufacturing campaign, my phone's ringing now, as part of a manufacturing campaign, we using plant-based technologies gets away from that too. And those plastics are not things that can be easily disposed of or digested or dealt with. So there are a number of other sort of advantages that go with the technology. I think that we ought to be spreading the message around.
Yeah, I agree. And also, if I may add, you mentioned the bioreactors, the complexity of scaling up bioreactors, we have to keep that in mind. When you think about plant, 1 plant or 10,000 plants will have the same growth conditions. So the scale up is easier with plants than with bioreactors. Yeah,
and it's very predictable. We know. So from getting a gene sequence of something that's new, a new product that we're trying to make, we can be handing over purified product in a matter of weeks, 12 weeks, something like that, even less. So there is a real speed element to that. But then also we know if whatever the expression levels are in, for example, 10 plants, well, we know that's going to be the expression level pretty much in 1 million plants. And if we optimize the expression level and improve it, we know that's what it's going to be going forward. So as Nathalie said, it's very, very predictable. And actually from a very early stage, you can start working out what your cost of goods are likely to be because you've got that predictability on the upstream side of things. And in terms of, the other big question that we get asked is glycosylation. Well, plants are, fully eukaryotic, and that's why they can deal with very complex proteins. Glycosylation is slightly different, but it can be tweaked to make it more human if you need to. But the other factor of it is it's also very, very consistent. So you don't get the batch-to-batch variation in glycosylation that you do in bioreactor systems, whether you like it or not. So again, all messages I think that will come out and the industry and public will become aware of in the future as more and more products are developed and manufactured using the technology.
It's kind of, I was interested there in a sense, this sort of potentially sort of major game-changing event, if you like, assuming the approval goes through. Let's assume that, why not? I don't know what's been cause and effect. I mean, it's interesting, I suppose, yeah, the visibility for me, I guess, has felt like this has come up quickly, but like you say, it's been around a long time, and maybe it's been the lack of investment or even the regulators that haven't kept up. That first approval, would you then envisage much more investment coming in once they see you can get these products through? That could be quite a game changer.
I would expect so. And again, Nathalie will comment as well, I'm sure. But I would expect so because it's validation that the technology works. And the investors are all sitting there thinking, I'm talking to investors all the time, not necessarily about investing in Leaf, but just generally. And they're all interested in the technology. And the question they ask is, well, how many products have been produced? Can you name some products that have been approved using the technology? So it will be a game changer. There's no question about that. And I think as we go forward, and then whether it's Medicago or others, and there are not very many organizations that are producing products in plants, but as we are able to start producing, whether it's vaccines or new drugs or whatever that perhaps were not possible before because they didn't express well in other systems, I think that's also going to be a game changer. I know, having spoken to people in pharma companies, that they've got freezers full of very interesting compounds, but have not gone very far with them because they've been so difficult to express in conventional expression systems, and they've tried everything. So from our point of view, what we're trying to do is tap into some of that and say, well, why don't we just try some and make some of those in plants, express them in plants. And on the occasions that we have been able to do that, it's worked. So we've been able to express them at significantly higher levels that would give the product a real chance of commercial viability if they're scaled up in plants.
Yeah, I agree, and I think yes, the approval of the first plant-derived vaccine will be a big step as a validation. But I think what you're doing, Simon, in your company is also helping build up the validation, because as a standalone company, Medicago cannot, we need to focus on our different, not that many products because we're not that big and we have a lot to do. So we cannot test as many compounds or products or different types of, fields that we would like to, but work, having a company like yours that can kind of, work on different strategies or different fields can help build also the confidence and the validation of the plant-based technologies, because we can build on this afterwards when we have a demonstration that a specific product can work in after you've worked on it, and maybe we can there are ways then to make it, like you said, commercially viable and build on this to put it on the market.
Yeah, and we've just made a number of products that we list on our website, really just to exemplify the technology, to demonstrate how flexible the technology is and adaptable it is to producing and expressing a wide range of products. So, and we'll hopefully continue to do that.
And that's a good thing, because like you said, we've performed like 17 clinical trials. Now we're in our 18th clinical trials as we speak. So it's a lot of investment, a lot of work. So we really need to focus. So the work you're doing will really help develop the field of plant-based technology for sure.
Excellent. And I mean, we touched upon it a little bit in the conversation about the context of 2020 being sort of COVID-19 dominated in that sense. But I know, just from looking at both companies, you've been hard at work in part of that response and understanding, and how the industry's response has been fantastic, and certainly your part of the industry has been no different in that it's made great leaps. So I just wonder if I come to you and actually hear from you direct how you've been deploying your technologies in the response to COVID. Because we'll start with Simon this time and then come to Nathalie.
Sure. So what we've been doing is we've been expressing some of the COVID-19 antigens, essentially, so that it can be used in in diagnostics. We're not in a position, unfortunately, I'm sure we'll come to this, we're not in a position to ramp up a vaccine and get a vaccine into manufacturing because we don't have GMP. But so we focused from a very early stage on trying to make some of the antigens that would be of interest to help generate vaccines and to help then in diagnostics and could be used in rapid diagnostic tests. So we've made a number of those and are continuing to look at making some more. So that's the diagnostics aspect has been the focus of our attention as far as COVID-19 is concerned.
And we know diagnostic is important for COVID-19, so that's a good thing you're working on it. So on our side at Medicago, at the beginning of 2020, we were watching what was happening in China, and as soon as the sequence of the spike protein has been made available, we decided to start the production, even though we wasn't considered a pandemic at the time. We saw the risk, but anyway, we've been working on the platform to address that type of emerging threats for 10 years now. Everybody was waiting for influenza, so we were ready for influenza. but anyway, like I said earlier, the versatility of the platform allowed us to really quickly switch to a coronavirus like particles. So 20 days after we started working on this project, we were able to identify a first candidate vaccine for COVID-19. So mid-March 2020, we had our first candidate. Mid-May, we had our first animal results showing that the what we call the CoVLP, so the coronavirus-like particle, was able to raise an interesting immune response and neutralizing immune response in mice. By the summer, we showed that in non-human primates, we saw the same thing, and that after a challenge, they were protected. So we were very, very happy with that, and we initiated the phase 1 clinical trial in humans mid-July. We published our the first results, like the interim day 42 results. So it's after 2 doses of the vaccine, beginning of November. So we were very happy with the results. The neutralizing antibodies levels were very good also in humans. And now we initiated like 2 weeks ago the phase 2/3 trial for this candidate vaccine. So we're moving into more than 600 subjects, 18 and above, focusing a lot on older subjects because they are the ones that are more at risk of developing severe diseases. So we are working very hard to generate these results to move into the phase 3 trial. So the efficacy testing of the candidate vaccine, hopefully before the end of the year or very early next year. So it's tomorrow. We're already December, at the beginning of December here. So we're working very hard to have our efficacy results, hopefully, probably springtime next year, because we're gonna recruit 30,000 subjects across the world, but we'll need to go into regions of the world where the virus will be circulating the most. So at the moment, unfortunately, North America is a good place, and yeah, Latin America. I hope UK. I wish UK will not be on the list, but it might be.
It might too.
Yeah. So yes, so we are really working very hard to generate these efficacy results as quickly as possible, so that we can distribute doses hopefully by mid next year, and as soon as we get the authorization from the regulatory authorities, we'll be ready to do so. We have a contract in place with the Canadian government. They have reserved doses from us. But we are in discussions with other countries also around the world, because we really believe in our candidate vaccine.
Which is great news. It's fantastic news. I think just generally, I think one other thing that COVID has demonstrated, which I don't think is really the general public is that aware of, is the industry has collaborated in amazing ways this last 11 months. And the fact that the UK has now approved, the MHRA has approved the use of a vaccine in under a year from the start is absolutely astonishing. You know, and that means it includes obviously all the clinical studies and all the safety studies and the MHRA review of all the data and everything else to make sure that all the safety aspects are well considered and covered, and everybody's very confident of it. And I would certainly have it if it becomes available. I think the industry has done a brilliant job with it.
Yes, you're right. I've never been so many collaborations across the world with the WHO, across industry. Even, you know, at Medicago, we are collaborating with GSK to develop the vaccine formulation. They're providing their pandemic adjuvant, their pandemic adjuvant to add to our vaccine. So it's a, you know, we have seen collaboration that I don't think would have been possible before the pandemic. So it's really impressive, really. And I think that's why we are moving so quickly also. We're building on each other's strengths. So, yeah.
And hopefully a model that will continue, actually.
Let's hope.
Because you know the pipelines are not that great, and drug development is taking so long and costing so much money. But if we can collaborate like this, then clearly there has to be advantages for everybody, including patients and providers. So
I think that's been sort of the interesting, or one of the exciting and interesting things around this has been the sheer scale of collaboration that came together so quickly. And you know, I don't know how many years in various locations we've all been talking about the sort of merits of open innovation and everyone sharing things. And somehow we never really seemed to get it right. It was open innovation as long as you got all the IP nailed down and everyone was comfortable. But here we saw a sort of a common enemy, I guess, or cause. And that's brought people back. And picks up on your point, Simon, you kind of hope the legacy of some of this will be around some of that collaboration and deal making. I guess what would be your feelings there, both of you, in terms of collaborations going forward with other companies or NGOs or academic institutes? It's going to be difficult, isn't it, for those negotiating the deals to say, well, we can't do it that quickly or that way.
I'll let Nathalie go first.
Yes. Okay. You're right, Tony. It's going to be difficult. On the other hand, at some point, we will need to breathe because everything is going so fast these days. Not a lot of people are sleeping, I can tell you. And I guess that's, I wouldn't say the bad thing, but working with, you know, companies or organizations across the world, you're addressing, you know, you're working all the time zones at the same time. So it can be complex at some point. You know, we have investors in Japan, so we're collaborating with GSK in the UK. We have, you know, collaborators on the west coast of the US. So, you know, we're up all day and night. So you're right that I guess we'll have some pressure about the speed, but I guess the level of emergency might be different. What I hope is that I think it's going to change the way of thinking the product development, not only on the research and development, manufacturing, but also on the clinical development. Regulatory review, I think, will be very different after this pandemic, I hope. And I can tell you that, you know, I've been talking to a lot of journalists since March, and, you know, people are, yeah, but what if you're not the first available on the market? What will happen? And I see, you know, it's not a race between companies, it's a race against the virus. And I think there's room for everybody at some point. You know, we're 8 billion people on the planet. So we will need collaboration. And let's hope, we already see an opening with the discussion we're having with different groups that after COVID-19, you know, for the next projects. So I personally, I'm confident that it will be different, I hope, but let's hope not too much pressure.
I think it's an interesting question, Tony, and I agree with everything that Nathalie said. I think under the current scenario, I think what has made a difference is the fact that governments have been placing orders and putting money into the developments, as opposed to companies having to dip into their pockets to try and generate a vaccine that they're not sure they're going to get a return on. So I think that's made life easier. Orders have been placed for billions of dollars and what have you. And so the companies know that there's a market and they're gonna generate revenues from all of this. Profitability is a different thing altogether, I think. But so I think that's made a difference. I think what will have happened almost certainly is I think there will be relationships that have been developed between companies at very senior levels that probably were not as strong, or perhaps it didn't even exist prior to this, which I think will make a difference in the future in terms of how organizations collaborate and how pharma collaborates with pharma and pharma collaborates with biotech, for example. But clearly there is still going to be pressure on companies, individual companies who have shareholders who want a return. And so the idea that everybody will be able to collaborate on every drug product, new drug product that wants to be produced, and that will generate enough profits to keep everybody's shareholders happy, I think that's probably a bit diluted. So I think there is still going to be competition in the industry, almost certainly. But I think my hope is that what this has demonstrated is there are some diseases around the world for which vaccines would make a huge difference and would save, millions of lives. And maybe this will bring governments and companies together in a way that has not been possible before, to say, actually, you know what, if we do this together, we can change lives. We don't just need Bill and Melinda Gates to fund malaria research, or malaria vaccine research, what happens to be. So I'm hoping that some of that will make a difference, and that some of these diseases that companies don't want to invest in because they just don't see a return on a vaccine for the Africa or the Asian subcontinent or third world countries that don't have the wherewithal to afford the sorts of prices for drugs that first world countries are able to afford. I'm hoping that will come out of this, and there'll be a real collaboration between governments and the industry to start finding some cures for those kinds of diseases.
Yeah, and that seems to be one of the real potential areas of learning and benefit out of this, I guess, is maybe showing governments the way that they can collaborate and not always see the industry as being, if you like, the problem rather than a partner in the solution, which we talk about it being like that, but often it hasn't been the way it's felt at that interface, I'm sure, for lots of people. I mean, equally, I guess, as the governments, and Nathalie, you touched upon kind of dealing with the regulators and how they've had to be adaptable and more flexible and quicker to enable where we've got to within a year. Looking back to when you were preparing for flu, and then a pandemic from COVID comes along, what do you think has been the biggest challenge, I guess, for you as a company dealing with regulators who were struggling to catch their breath as well?
In fact, I think I guess we were lucky enough that we've built a good relationships with the regulatory authorities for the past 7 years now that we've been working on developing our seasonal influenza vaccine candidate. So of course, I think the challenges are coming both ways, because we have a lot of pressure for generating data, putting together the files, and then they have the pressure to come back to us very rapidly to comment and adapt and make sure that we meet the timelines we are putting on our shoulders, I would say, on everybody's shoulder, not only Medicago's, but the regulators, the government. So the challenge is mainly time more than challenges with the regulators. We're building on the work we've done with them for many years now. They know the platform. They are more open to the platform than they were at the beginning, and that's normal because that was brand new for them, to move, you know, for them to understand, you know, okay, what's your raw material, you know, if you compare it to eggs, for example. So is the plant, where does the raw material begin and where does it end? And I see Simon saying yes. So there are some, you know, you have to adjust the process in a way that they can understand, you know, to translate that into into documents or wording that they understand. But now that the process is in place, you know, it's more straightforward. But again, I think time is the challenge here.
Yeah, I think the regulators in some ways are between a rock and a hard place, aren't they? Mm-hmm. Because they have the governments shouting at them to approve more drugs more quickly. They have the public and the patients shouting at them to produce more drugs more quickly. But they also, on the other hand, everybody's saying they need to be safe, you know. And if people start dying, then who are we going to sue? Are we going to go after the regulators, or are we going to go after the drug companies? So they have a big responsibility, and it's not easy. I think again, a few things that I think have happened over the last few years is advanced therapies are obviously very new and still new, and they were new to the regulators too. But what has happened out of that is that again, industry has worked with the regulators to make sure that actually the new regulations, and there will still be new regulations required for advanced therapies, particularly autologous therapies, I suspect, they work together to come to practical solutions and agreements on what the requirements will be for market authorization for those kinds of products. And again, I think that's going to flow through into the general relationships with the regulatory authorities on new drug applications and various other things. So there's always going to be this pressure of speed. And as Nathalie says, you know, there's pressure to generate data, and you know, we're our own worst enemies in some ways, because the smarter we get and the smarter the technologies are that we develop for being able to test new drugs, the more the regulators are going to ask for. So, and that's, I guess, is going to be a never-ending cycle, really. And you know, this whole idea about trying to get away from animal studies, I think everybody would love to get away from animal studies. There's no question of that. But right now, there are no in vitro that I'm aware of, and I may be well out of date with this, but I don't think there are in vitro studies that any of the regulators is comfortable enough with, that have been validated well enough for them to say, actually, we don't need animal studies anymore. That's just not the case, is it? So it's a question of, you know, building those relationships with the regulators, and I think the regulators in the industry working more and more together, as opposed to seeming to be on opposite sides of the table, and I think that can only be a good thing.
Excellent. I mean, I'm sort of partly, I guess, when I look at society as a whole, you know, if you watch TV or read the newspapers or read the
Don't do that.
It's
bad news.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's good for anyone's health, to be honest. But it's, you know, but almost at the moment, it kind of feels that plant-derived or plant-based anything is seen as good, whether that's diet or other manufacturing, if you like, and fuels and what have you. But I just wonder, you know, it wasn't that long ago when, you know, science playing around with plants and creating nutritious foods and superfoods, and they were labeled as if they were some sort of Frankenfood type things. I just wonder, you know, perception, Simon, you here from the UK, and Nathalie yourself in Canada, you know, there is this element where investors want to see more and more kind of alignment with some of those social pressures that are there, as do the next wave of bright people and bright minds we want to attract. And I guess I'm just curious as to whether you feel generally, if you looked outside of our field into society and the public, do you think if you came to this is a plant-based vaccine, would that feel more attractive, or would they see it as some Frankenstein type medicine? I'm just curious as to what you feel, the context you're
in. Would you like me to go first, or would you like Nathalie to go first?
Carry on.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think certainly in the UK, well, I think the whole thing boils down to when this all started, when the whole GMO thing blew up, it was because because people made assumptions, and I'm not going to name any companies, but people made assumptions about, well, this would be fine, the public will accept it. And the education and the narrative and the communications around the technology were so poorly handled that it got completely out of hand. So I think, and we're not out of that, I don't think, certainly not in the UK. I think there's still a significant degree of education that has to happen with the general public. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way whatsoever, because it's quite complicated science, some of this. So communicating that message in a way that your average non-scientist can understand and appreciate, I think is quite difficult, and we've not cracked it by any stretch of the imagination, I don't think. But I think there is merit in plant-based products, and I think people are beginning to look at it slightly differently and more favorably. And I think, you know, a vaccine. So again, Nathalie, no pressure, but you know, hurry up. Will make a difference to all of that. You know, and if you tell people, actually, you know, all of the, you know, the flu vaccine is currently made in eggs or whatever it happens to be, you know, there are people against all of that too. So, and it's not a nice process. It's complicated, expensive. It's all those other things. So I think it's down to communication, Tony, is what I'm getting to. We need to educate the public better, because our communication around this has been very, very poor. And we need the regulators on board with that too. They have to help with all of that, and the governments have to help with all of that. And again, governments have to be practical about GMO and what is GMO, because let's face it, you know, most of the products we're eating today are derived from GMO products anyway, and people just don't seem to realize that. And there's talk about, you know, stop eating beef, you know, we're not going to have any cattle anywhere, and we're going to feed everybody on plant-based material. Well, the only way we're going to feed this planet with plant-based products is using GMO. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So we just won't be able to produce enough food without genetically modifying the food to grow in different regions and different temperatures and climates and all those kinds of things. So there's a big education program that has to be initiated, I think. Certainly in the UK and Europe. I don't know about North America particularly, or Canada, but I suspect the same is probably applies there.
Yes, I agree with you, Simon. Education, I think, is the right word to use here. I guess at least in Canada, the GMO concerns are not as big as in Europe, from what we hear. Although there are some concerns, some organizations are putting pressure to put stickers on food sold in grocery stores, so that people can make the choice they want. So yes, there are concerns, but things that I'm used to do when I'm explaining our technology is that our technology is non-GMO. So the plants that we are using are non-GMO. So it's regular wild type, plants. It's transient expression. So it's a weak production in plants. There's no integration in the genome of the plant, so no modification to the plant. And anyway, we're harvesting the plants to purify the vaccines afterwards. So there's no plant that can be regenerated from the process. So this helps, I guess, to reassure some people when we're talking about the GMO. But in Canada, especially, we are getting the government are getting a lot of pressure to go greener, and I think that our industry, the plant-based industry, has a good fit in there for a greener pharma process, I would say. We are studying the carbon footprint at our facility, so we're doing some studies on that, because people are asking questions, and we think that we can make a difference. And also we have started to do some surveys about the use of plant-derived vaccines in Canada and in the US. And I think we have a potential to reduce some vaccine hesitancy by diversifying the offer of vaccine and include plant-derived vaccines in the portfolio of products. So there's really an opening, I guess. People are open-minded to hear about, plant-derived vaccines, and yes, we saw a trend towards, oh, okay, so plant-derived, so yeah, okay, maybe I would be more inclined to use your vaccine compared to another, vaccine that has been produced differently. So that was interesting to see that the process of we're using to manufacture the vaccine could have an impact on vaccine hesitancy.
I mean, it's a pleasure to hear that as a positive feeling. I'd agree with you. I think there's a lot of communication and education in that nicest sense of the word to go around it. But it does kind of feel there's that opportunity at this point in time to address, if you like, concerns that come back from the sort of conspiracy theory sides, or people who worry about things perhaps that maybe they shouldn't need to worry about. But you've got to take account of everybody's viewpoints as you address them. So I mean, it's immense progress going on in the field, clearly, and some big potential milestones coming up. But what would you say is your biggest challenge ahead of you and your companies looking from now? If you were to look out 3-5 years, what do you think the big hairy beast is that you have to tackle? Maybe I'll come to Nathalie and then to Simon.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, that's a very good question. Once we have the validation of the platform, that will be a huge step for the field. But I think at least for our product, the first product we're expecting to be approved is a seasonal influenza vaccine, but we don't know with the speed of development right now. It might be the COVID vaccine, so we don't know yet. But the biggest challenge afterward will be, I think, the deployment in the crowded market. Being the influenza market or the COVID-19 vaccine market. But we are building. We are confident that if we are building on the differentiation aspects of both the platform and of the product that we are bringing to the market, that we'll find our place in this market. But it will take education, it will take time, it will take more studies. But we really hope that with our efforts we'll be able to address these challenges sooner than later.
Simon?
From our point of view, it's probably a little bit simpler actually than Nathalie's problem. We're a young company, so we've only really been commercializing what we were doing for 2 years, and we've made significant progress in that time. So the challenges that we face are, one, we can demonstrate the technology works, but then clearly, again, because if you think about the regulatory framework, we have to be able to scale up, and we have to be able to get those products into GMP manufacture for both clinical studies and commercial manufacture. Because otherwise, from a contract manufacturing point of view, customers, clients, collaborators, partners ask the question. So if it works, that's fantastic, and you can express it, and it's cost effective, etc. But if you can't scale it up and you can't get it in GMP and you can't then show us a route to commercial manufacture, then at some point we're going to have to revert back to using conventional technologies. And again, that's for all the reasons we know about. That's expensive and it's risky and it adds time and they may miss the market opportunity. So from a leaf perspective, that's our challenge, and that's something that I'm, but not me, but all of us in the company, the whole team, are working very hard to address. And we're doing it in a couple of ways. We're looking at strategic partners. We're looking at scaling up ourselves in Norwich, all those options, and there are options for that we are considering and looking at, but looking for funding for, etc., etc. So for us, over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, that's going to be the biggest challenge for us. I think we've done well enough in exemplifying the technology and showing that it can work, and now we've got to be able to demonstrate that actually we can take people all the way to market with the technology. So.
Yeah, I'm conscious of time, and I've kept you both for a significant part of your busy diaries. But we're recording this as we move towards Christmas. And I suspect the big fella's starting his journey soon from the North Pole. So when you get up on Christmas morning, what would you be top of your list to be underneath the Christmas tree? So,
A COVID vaccine.
Yeah, I'd like Medicago's COVID vaccine and their influenza vaccine. Thanks very much. That'd be enormously helpful for me too.
Well, I guess there's always one item that nobody can get when it gets down to Christmas. So getting your order in early there, Simon, seems like a good plan.
Yeah, you can send me a vial, Nathalie.
So I think on that note, I'd just like to thank Nathalie and Simon for sharing your thoughts and telling us about Medicago and leaf expression systems, and also planting plenty of food for thought in terms of where the field might go and what the advantage are and how people may respond to that. So thank you for your openness and your time, and I'll look forward to seeing the feedback from our Genesis delegates in just over a week. Thank you very much.
A pleasure. Thank you very much, Nathalie. Very nice to talk to you as well.
That was very.
We'll speak soon.